and came to meet them, hustling them around the crowd and into the shop before anybody could notice and recognize them. "That was a good tip about the telephone," he said softly. "Mick checked at the Rosemont Exchange. Rivers got a long-distance call from Topeka last night, 10:15 to 10:17. We got the night long-distance operator out of bed, and she confirmed it. Rivers took the call himself. He gets a lot of long-distance calls in the evenings. She knew his voice." He corrected himself, shifting to the past tense, and glancing as he did at the chalk outline on the floor, now scuffed by many feet and the dried bloodstains. "You say this puts Gresham in the clear?" "Absolutely," Rand assured him. "He was at home from 9:22 on." He introduced Pierre Jarrett and explained their mission. "You find anything except what's here in the shop?" "Only Rivers' own .38 Smith & Wesson in his room, and a lot of pistols out in the garage that look like junk to me," Kavaalen said. "I'll show them to you." Rand nodded. "Pierre, you look around the shop. I'll see what this other stuff is." He followed Kavaalen through a door at the rear of the shop, the same one through which Cecil Gillis had carried the Kentucky rifle the afternoon before. Beside Rivers' car, there was a long workbench in the garage, and piles of wood and cardboard cartons, and stacks of newspapers, and a barrel full of Excelsior, all evidently used in preparing arms for shipment. There was also a large pile of old pistols and a number of long arms. Rand pawed among the pistols. They were, as the State Police Corporal had said, all junk. The sort of things a dealer has to buy at times in order to get something really good. Many of them had been partially dismantled for parts. When he was certain that the heap of junk weapons didn't conceal anything of value, he returned to the shop. Pierre was waiting for him by Rivers' desk. He shook his head. "Not a thing," he reported. "I found a couple of out-and-out fakes, and about 10 or 15 that had been altered in one way or another, and a lot of reblued stuff, but nothing from Fleming's collection. What did you find?" Rand laughed. "I found Rivers' scrap heap, and some pistols that probably contributed parts to some of the other stuff you found," he said. "Of course, all we can say is that the stuff isn't here. Rivers could have bought it and stored it outside somewhere, but even so, I'm not taking the Fleming butler too seriously as a suspect for the murder." "What's this about Fleming's butler?" a voice broke in. "Have you been withholding information from me?" Rand turned to find that Farnsworth had left the press conference in front and crept-soled up on him from behind. "I withheld a theory, which seems to have come to nothing," he replied. Kavaalen told the D.A. who Rand was. "He's cooperating with us," he added. "Sergeant McKenna instructed us to give him every consideration." "It seems that a number of valuable pistols were stolen from the collection of the late Lane Fleming," Rand said. "We suspected that the butler had stolen them and sold them to Rivers. I thought it possible that he might also have killed Rivers to silence him about the transaction. None of the stolen items have turned up here, so there's nothing to connect the thefts with the death of Rivers." "Good heavens, you certainly didn't suspect a prominent and respected citizen like Mr. Rivers of receiving stolen goods?" Farnsworth demanded, aghast. "Who respects him?" Rand hooted. "Rivers was a notorious swindler. He had that reputation among arms collectors all over the country. He was expelled from membership in the National Rifle Association for misrepresentation and fraud. Why, he even swindled Lane Fleming on a pair of fake pistols a week or so before Fleming's death. And the very reason why your man Olsen was inclined to suspect Stephen Gresham was that he had had trouble with Rivers about a crooked deal Rivers had put over on him. Fortunately, Mr. Gresham has since been cleared of any suspicion, but—" "Who says he's been cleared?" Farnsworth snapped. "He's still a suspect." "Sergeant McKenna says so," Corporal Kavaalen declared. "He has been cleared. I guess we just didn't get around to telling you about that." He went on to explain about the long-distance call that had furnished Stephen Gresham's alibi. "And Gresham was at home from 9:22 on," Rand added. "There are 8 witnesses to that. His wife and daughter, myself, Captain Jarrett here, and his fiancée, Miss Lawrence, Philip Cabot, Adam Trehearne, Colin MacBride." Farnsworth looked bewildered. "Why wasn't I told about that?" he demanded sulkily. "Sergeant McKenna's been too busy, and I didn't think of it," Kavaalen said insolently. I'm not supposed to report to you anyhow. Why didn't your man Olsen tell you? He was with us when we checked with the telephone company." Farnsworth tried to ignore that by questioning Pierre about the time of Gresham's arrival home, then turned to Rand and wanted to know what the latter's interest in the case was. Rand told him about his work in connection with the Fleming collection, producing Humphrey Goode's letter of authorization. Farnsworth seemed impressed in about the same way as the coroner, Kirchner, but he was still puzzled. "But I understood that you had been retained by Stephen Gresham to investigate this murder," he said. "So you did talk to Olsen after I saw him," Rand pounced. "Odd he didn't mention this telephone thing." "Why, yes, that's true. My agency handles all sorts of business. The two operations aren't mutually exclusive. For a while, I even thought they might be related, but now—" he shrugged. "Well, you believe now that Rivers had nothing to do with the pistols you say were stolen from the Fleming collection?" Farnsworth asked. Rand shook his head ambiguously. Farnsworth took that for a negative answer to his question, as he was intended to. "And you say Mr. Gresham has been completely cleared of any suspicion of complicity in this murder?" "Mr. Rand's helping us. We want him to stick around till the case is closed," Corporal Cavalier threw in, perceiving the drift of Farnsworth's questions. "He and Sergeant McKenna have worked together before. He's given us a lot of good tips." "You understand," Rand took over, "Mr. Gresham didn't retain me merely to help him clear himself. I don't accept that kind of retainers. I was retained to find the murderer of Arnold Rivers, and I intend to continue working on this case until I do. I hope that the same friendly spirit of mutual cooperation will exist between your office and my agency as exists between me and the State Police. I certainly don't want to have to work at cross purposes with any of the regular law enforcement agencies." "Oh, certainly, of course." Farnsworth didn't seem to like the idea, but there was no apparent opening for objection. He and Rand exchanged mendacious compliments, pledged close cooperation, and did practically everything but draw up and sign a treaty of alliance. Then Farnsworth and Corporal Cavalier accompanied Rand and Pierre Jarrett to the front door. Some of the reporters who were ravening outside must have spotted Rand as he had entered. They were all waiting for him to come out and set up a monstrous ululation when he appeared in the doorway. With Farnsworth beaming approval, Rand assured the press that he was no more than a mere spectator, that the State Police and the efficient District Attorney of Scott County had the situation well in hand, and that an arrest was expected within a matter of hours. Then he and Pierre hurried to his car and drove away. End of chapter 13.